Well, Australia is behind the rest of the world in beating inflation, according to a brand new report.
For more, let's bring in John Keogh, economics editor of the Australian Financial Review in Canberra. Johnny, good morning. Why are we struggling so much to bring inflation down?
Yeah, good morning, Carl and Sylvia. Look, this new report from the International Monetary Fund, it declares the global inflation battle largely won. But it's a bit of a different story here in Australia. We're one of only 2 countries where inflation's tipped to be above 3% still at the end of next year. That's above the Reserve Bank's target. Why is it? Well, the simple reason is, believe it or not, the Reserve Bank here just hasn't raised interest rates as quickly or as high as other central banks around the world. So inflation's taking longer to get rid of. The flip side, the good news, if you like, is our employment market's stronger. So there's more jobs here. Unemployment in other countries has gone up more as a result of those central banks raising interest rates.
Still, those headline figures are pretty disturbing for us, aren't they not? You've got 2% inflation roughly across the US and Europe, some parts of Asia, Japan I think it's 1.8. Australia is a comparatively eye-watering 3.6%. The US moved on interest rates, but it's pretty clear we're not going to go anytime soon.
That's exactly right. And if you look at the financial markets now, Carl, this is professional investors who bet on interest rates, generally have a good feel of where things are heading. They're pricing in now the first rate cut by the Reserve Bank in May next year. So that keeps getting pushed out and deferred. It was February a few weeks ago. Now they're saying May, and that's running up right against the deadline of a federal election.
Yes.
Yep. Very interesting. John, thank you. Have a great day.
Johnny.
Australia's high inflation run is tipped to exceed every advanced economy in the world bar one. Live to Today federal politics reporter Liz Daniels. Liz, pressure is mounting on the Albanese government to be tighter on spending.
It certainly is, Jane. That warning has gone out to governments worldwide. Rein in spending and get debt under control as this global inflation fight continues. The International Monetary Fund today releasing its economic outlook, and it is bad news. Australia's inflation will fall by the end of this year as the government's bill relief does help to ease off those costs for households, but then it's forecast to rise again in 2025. Only us and Slovakia, the only 2 advanced economies in the world where the rate is tipped to be above 3% by the end of next year, and that means that rate cuts could be a long way off.
That's why we're not getting a rate cut, because of government mismanagement, while almost every other developed country in the world has already experienced one, if not more, interest rate cuts.
The Treasurer today flying to Washington, DC for high-level finance meetings, including with the World Bank. The market now not pricing a rate cut until May. Jane, that means that if the government was hoping for relief for mortgage holders before the election, all those hopes may just be fading.
Moving on, let's talk inflation. Economists are predicting Australia's run of high inflation will exceed all advanced economies except for Slovakia. Matt, the world goes low and we go high, but not in the way you would hope.
Yeah, well, look, the government is completely out of excuses now. They don't even have the excuse that the dog ate their homework. I mean, they have been blaming Vladimir Putin for inflation, Ukraine. I mean, the question has to be asked, well, if Ukraine's the cause of inflation, why does it seem to be having the biggest impact in the world in the country that's the furthest away from the conflict? Because the inflation rates in Europe, in North America, are much, much lower than those that are here. The reality is this government has presided over big spending budgets at a time of high inflation. They've brought in record numbers of people that have pushed up housing costs for all Australians, and they have imposed massive new red tape on our mining industry, on the general workforce, that's lowered our productivity and pushed up inflationary pressures. That's why we're not getting a rate cut, because of government mismanagement, while almost every other developed country in the world has already experienced one, if not more, interest rate cuts.
But how can we turn all that around? Is it just going to genuinely take forever and a day?
So cut back our migration rate, which is what Peter Dutton has announced that we want to do. Reform our labour market so we don't impose 1970s workplace regulations on them. Approve new mines, like that gold mine out at Orange. Get that going. And most of all, impose some discipline on government spending. The Coalition has already announced that we'd cut back $90 billion of government spending.
Well, it's government.
That is what is adding inflation.
It's government spending that's in the spotlight this morning, according to economists. And while they're on, warnings to cut it back, it's Aussie households that have to do the heavy lifting, Heidi. This morning we're told that interest rate cuts may not arrive until May. It keeps getting further and further away.
Further and further away, bigger and bigger pressure on households. And as you say, Sylvia, we've done what we can. We're doing the heavy lifting. We've done plenty of the heavy lifting.
it is time that I think government, state and federal, take some responsibility for their spending. Reduce that. Do your bit of heavy lifting to help us out. Now, often, I know our state government will say when we put it to them today, it's not our fault, it's not on us. We're spending on services, we're spending on growth, and that's a good thing. But we don't want to win this race. No one wants to be the leader in inflation in the world. Something has to be done. I don't know that Matt's solutions are going to be fast enough by any stretch of the imagination.
It's all very frustrating, some of those numbers out there this morning. Matt and Heidi, we've got...
Eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up. Political lock him up. Lock him out. That's what we have to do. And so look, you all know how this works. Every single vote counts. And that's, again, not hyperbole. Think how close these elections can be. And you've got one of the best delegations in the United States Senate. I'm not joking. No. That's not a joke. That's not a joke. They got more courage than the 10 best guys I know.
Have you ever wondered how smart glasses work? Here are the two most common designs. Option 1 is to put a screen lying flat on top and to have that shine down onto a semi-transparent mirror that reflects the image away from you into another curved semi-transparent mirror on the front, which then focuses the light and reflects it back into your eye. This is called the birdbath design, and it's used by companies like Xreal and Rokit. You can recognize this for having this bulge on top where the display has to be placed. Option 2 is waveguide systems. Here a tiny projector sits in the stem of the glasses from where it shines into the glass. The light gets trapped inside the glass and travels by bouncing off the sides as if it were a fiber optic cable. There are tiny mirrors inside the glass that guide the image in front of your eye, hence why we call these waveguides, and you can see this system in action in more expensive glasses like these ones from TCL, because this design lets us have a single flat glass with no extra bulge. To see 3 more designs and to find out why we can't just put the display directly in front of our eyes, check out my full video linked below.